Hey guys, KiwiSylveon, and welcome back to Seduce Me to the Demon War, Sam's Route. In the last episode, let's just say the boys are here, and so are their wives. Sam nearly killed Diana if it weren't for Cero, and now we're trying to figure out what's been going on, and apparently we have to be around when the Demon Lord dies for the curse to be lifted. Well, it still makes no sense.
Even while it doesn't, it's still better to be safe than sorry. I don't want to kill him and then still have you stuck here because of an error.
True. I could only sigh and take it in. So I had to be there when the Demon Lord fell. Great. Diana waved her hand dismissively through the air, breaking my potential thoughts.
Anyway, we can't have you dying on the way there, and we can't monitor you when we're in battle. You should at least know how to defend yourself. That's why we've come up with a solution.
What solution?
Simple. The other rebel leaders and Cero have agreed that if you'd like a trainer to enhance your abilities, you can train with one of them.
Ooh, training! I stared, seeing Cero step forward with a nod.
Each of the leaders is proficient in a different area of magic and battle strategy, good enough for self-defense. I can't speak for the others, but I can assure you that with Cero's skill and training methods, you will be well prepared by the time the siege arrives.
Cero nodded and bowed to me slightly. While I was flattered at the idea, did I really need a trainer? I knew Taekwondo, and I at least knew how to defend myself, demon or not. Then again, we were in the demon world where magic was the norm. What would the others teach me? Diana ran her hand through her hair, looking to the side as she listed off each leader and their skills.
Sergeant is a brute demon, bred from a nomadic tribe. He most likely teach you the ways of the brute demon, using your fists and speed to keep you alive.
That sounds like Violet in my head.
Shadow is, by definition, a shadow demon, so he'd probably teach you about dark magic, light manipulation, and assassination.
That sounds like her too a little bit.
Rabbit is a wild magic-based animal demon, using her animal-focused energy as her weapon. She'd probably teach you how to do the same. Fae? I am honestly not sure. I know they can change their size and use elemental magic as well, but to be honest, I do not know what they would teach you.
I choose Sergeant! Diana nodded. Sergeant was the military commander, and I could tell he was strong just from looking at him. He was my best bet in learning how to defend myself. With that, Diana turned on her heel and left the room.
Finish eating. Afterwards, you should start training.
Woo! Everyone in the room nodded their affirmation as Diana and Cero left.
Well, it looks like we'll be busy for the next couple of days.
You can say that again.
This'll be fun.
Of course Sam would say that.
Man, training's gonna suck.
Don't worry, Matthew.
It'll be worth it, though.
Mm-hmm.
Damien's right.
As we all finished eating, everyone left to either train or do things on their own. I left to start my own work, determined to be prepared for what was to come. Demon Lord wasn't going to win. I wouldn't let him. I chose to train with the sergeant. Wow. He seemed to be skilled in combat, and he was the commander of the main army, so I trusted him to train me to be strong and dependable. I didn't want to be a silent observer in this war. I would pull my own weight. Sergeant led me outside of the castle onto an empty training ground. Footprints and wear showed that the space was well used, but the only ones in the area at the moment were Sergeant and myself. The air seemed fresh at the faint smell of flowers and fauna swept past my nose. However, I didn't get time to enjoy the atmosphere.
Human, I will not waste my breath hollering at you like a soldier, but I expect you to listen like one. Now stop sniffing the air and face me.
I quickly nodded and turned around to face Sergeant. I pressed my arms to my side, ready and at attention for my next order. Sergeant stared hard at me, making me slightly nervous. How was he going to train me? Sergeant began to slowly walk around my body, letting his eyes trail up and down my form in an analytical gaze. I stood still, not sure if he wanted me to follow along, and knowing he would command me to move if I needed to. He remained silent, walking in circles around me like a slow, encroaching vulture. I felt a twinge of irritation at his lack of attention. I was supposed to be training! What are you doing? Sergeant let out a small chuckle as he finally came around in front of me.
Weak, but still workable.
What? I was majorly confused. Was he calling me weak? I felt a small spark of anger bubble in my core as I glared at Sergeant. What is that supposed to mean? Sergeant smirked a bit as he crossed his arm over his chest in an almost prideful show of dominance.
That means you're weak, but still workable. You're not a fighter, and you're not strong enough to defend yourself.
The anger in my stomach boiled, and soon I gritted my teeth at Sergeant. Was this really happening? Why was he being an ass? What the hell? Over at my anger, Sergeant seemed to nod and almost smile a bit.
There it is. Took a bit.
What are you talking about?
Rage.
What? Rage? Was I supposed to be angry? I continued to glare at Sergeant, unsure of where he was going with this.
Rage is a form of raw energy, wild like fire and tamed with patience. If used properly, rage can be very deadly. Very few demons can harness it, but brute demons are the masters of rage.
I felt a little enlightened. Rage was also a form of energy? I felt a small spark in my core, remembering how angry I was with the sergeant, and mentally noted that what I felt could be tapped into rage energy, instead of just felt as an irregular emotion. Sergeant cracked his neck and let a small sigh.
However, since you're a human, there's no guarantee that you can truly use your rage in battle. This is just a test to see what you can do.
What if I can't harness it?
Then you're shit out of luck. I don't have the time or patience to train you like a regular soldier, human. Now is your only chance not to fuck it up.
I gulped silently. This was my only chance to try it? It definitely seemed like a challenge, but was I really up for it? Sergeant shook his head.
Humans are really easy to read. Don't doubt yourself just yet, human. You haven't even started.
Looking up at Sergeant, I could tell he was being genuine. Still, I wasn't sure that I was even able to do what he expected me to do. What could rage energy do, anyway? I guess I would have to wait and learn. Sergeant rolled his shoulders and held out his hand, pointing at a training dummy that was set up in the middle of the field. As his hands hovered in the air, it began to slowly emanate a red aura. I stared wide-eyed as it began to grow in intensity.
Watch closely, human.
Aye, sir. Aye, sir. Soon a black orb formed right in front of his open palm, wrapped in dark red lightning that seemed to arc over its surface. The orb grew larger and larger with each second that passed. As I looked over at Sergeant, I noticed his eyes were glowing a dark gold. His expression was full of anger, but his body was opposing the emotion on his face with a calm and concentrated stance. When the orb finally reached the size of a basketball, Sergeant put his hand with the orb back behind his body and then thrust it forward, releasing the orb as target. Like a lightning bolt, the orb flew forward and slammed into the training dummy, ripping it from the rod that was holding it up. However, Sergeant suddenly vanished from his spot and reappeared right in front of the flying dummy. What the? With a swift kick, Sergeant sent the dummy flying toward the surrounding forest. The unfortunate dummy slammed it and nearly exploded at the base of a tree, breaking apart into pieces as it landed. I was shaking just from the sight. How did he... Sergeant landed on the ground and turned back to me, walking away from the result of his attack. He grabbed his hands and rolled his head, stretching as if he were just warming up. That was... I could see Violet just going, awesome! That's so cool! Sergeant chuckled as he finally stopped walking. It was true, though. He was faster than I could catch and powerful enough to practically demolish the dummy. I was curious to see what he could do when he wasn't just training me or showing off. Sergeant then pointed to a second dummy and ushered me forward.
Now, focus on your rage. You felt it already, but you need to rekindle it and capture it in your hand.
My hand? Sergeant nodded before reaching over and lifting my arm up, positioning it like how he did when he attacked the first dummy. It clicked. He wanted me to do the same thing he did. I looked at the back of my hand, suddenly nervous. Would I be able to do the same thing he did? He was already trained in this and knew what to do. I was practically jumping into this without a life jacket. My nerves began to dance around in fear as fear shook my core. Even still, was rage something I really wanted to try and use? It seemed like it was some sort of volatile power. Dangerous and deadly if not controlled properly. More so, if I got to use my rage, would I become dependent on it? Was this something I really wanted to do? Yeah. If Sergeant believed I could control it, then I had to believe him. He was a master of that kind of power, so he would know better than me. I focused on the back of my hand, concentrating on trying to replicate Sergeant's attack. I tried to imagine a black orb appearing before my palm and watching it grow, but nothing came in reality. I began to get frustrated.
Don't focus on the attack. Focus on your rage. Fuel it with reason and you will control it.
The burning flame in my gut began to flicker, reminding me of the anger I felt before. I quickly latched onto it, tightening my stomach and focusing on making it burn brighter. I had to feel it somehow. The Demon Lord! I felt myself begin to think about the Demon Lord. The bastard brought me here for all for spite, and I was trapped here until we killed him. I was sick just from imagining his laughter, his dark voice in the air. The more he spoke, the more I wanted to end him with my own hands. I wanted to seal his fate myself, and use my anger to show him who was stronger. I was forced to remain in this world, and I couldn't do anything about it until we met face to face. I wanted to go home, but my asshole soon-to-be father-in-law trapped me here. The more I thought of it, the more the flame within me grew. My body became warm, and heat surged through my veins in response. Soon my vision became clouded in ruby haze, as if I were looking at the world through foggy red glass goggles. However, one thing that I was able to focus on was the dummy ahead of me between my fingers, glowing a strange black aura. Was this how brute demons saw their enemies? The energy in my body began to slowly weave into my hand, forming a baseball-sized orb that slowly became bigger and bigger with each breath I took. I could hear Sergeant smirk behind me in pride. As the energy in the orb became almost too large to hold, I felt my body completely tense up and strange winds began to pick up around my body. I quickly brought the orb back and roughly pushed it forward towards my target.
Now run at it!
At a shout, I quickly stepped forward. I began to hyper-focus onto the dummy as my orb slammed into its torso and bent it back over its stand. I felt enraged that I wasn't able to break it off, adding to the energy burning within my body. I wanted to kick the shit out of it. I wanted to make it bust open like a piñata. If I had to do it with my own foot, then I would do it over and over until it was completely decimated, like how Sergeant dealt with his own training dummy. I suddenly came face to face with it as I rushed at it. I brought my leg back and slammed it into the dummy's head and ripping it from its torso. The head flew back a couple feet and skidded across the ground before rolling to stop by the foot of a tree. My fury became out of control. I found myself becoming livid at the results of my attack, causing me to pummel a flurry of punches into the remaining dummy torso, making it bounce off and slam itself into each impact. My knuckles and fingers were aching from each impact as waves of pain rushed through them. I didn't give a damn, nor could I find any reason to. My mind became lost in my rage that I continued taking on my non-living victim.
Hey!
From behind me, a pair of large arms hooked themselves up from my torso and yanked me back, locking their hands behind my head and effectively holding my flailing and twitching arms in place. Still, the blood-red tint of the world didn't dull, and my anger wasn't going away. I was pretty sure that I was foaming at the mouth, but my overwhelming fury overcame all of my senses.
Breathe, you little brute!
My instincts began to kick in, forcing me to take in hard and deep breaths. With each inhale, my body became racked with shivering lactic acid, and with exhale, the flame within my core began to slowly die. After what seemed like minutes within Sarge's arm lock, the red within my eyes vanished, and even the dribble around my lips seemed to have vanished, leaving me an achy mess of being and causing me to go slightly limp in Sergeant's arm.
There you go. Jeez, you've got a lot of energy for a human.
I slowly looked back at Sergeant as he released me and stretched one of my arms up, causing my shoulder to creak and stretch out the ache within it. I felt a bit embarrassed at what I had done, but as Sergeant stretched my other arm, he laughed.
At least we can skip to teaching you how to control your rage.
How do I do that? I felt out of breath as my body became overwhelmed with a dull ache, probably from me laying loose on the dummy. Sergeant gently tilted my head side to side to stretch my neck before running his knuckles over my back, working out the unknown nonsense.
Just breathe. When you're pissed, you take a step back and breathe. It's the same thing when using rage.
Seems so simple, but if it got me out of that state I was in, then it was good enough to agree with and nod it to in understanding.
Everything going fine out here?
Yes, Mama. Yes, Diana. Sergeant and I looked over to see Diana walking over to us from the castle door, crossing her arms and staring at us both.
We're good. We're just getting started.
That's good to hear. I'm on my way to the training block now to work with the troops and just wanted to stop by.
As Diana nodded in turn, Sergeant suddenly stepped away from me towards her.
Succubus.
Doubting my skills as a leader already, Commander?
I stared wide-eyed as Diana turned her head and looked at Sergeant with a stern, almost degrading gaze. What the hell? Where did that come from? Sergeant stared right back at her, but I could very faintly see his hand go a soft layer of red before he closed his eyes and let him vanish with a breath.
No, I wasn't.
Then what is it?
Nothing.
Sergeant turned back to me and crossed his arms, obviously irritated at Diana, but somehow unwilling to fight her about whatever was on his mind. As Sergeant turned away from her, Diana shook her head and started to walk away.
You forget who trained the rebellion before you came around.
Diana finally left, disappearing into the forest. Sergeant, however, maintained a stone, agitated facial expression. That was uncalled for, but it put a little perspective on things. She had trained the rebellion before he came and took on the role of army commander. Sergeant shook his head.
Some training you did back then, Succubus.
Sergeant? Sergeant lifted his head to look at me before letting out a sigh.
What?
Are we going to continue? She wouldn't want to. That was his business. She would not want to go into it. Are we going to continue? He seemed a little aggravated, so I wanted to take his mind off of Diana and focus on training. Sergeant nodded, uncrossing his arms and cracking his neck slightly. We continued to train through the day, switching between controlling my rage and letting it loose on a training dummy or even a tree. The longer I went at it, the easier it became to control myself and come out of a frenzied state of mind. By the end of training, I was able to do Sergeant's move, just without being able to knock the dummy off of its post. That was infuriating, but I had to remember that I wasn't going to master everything, nor was I strong enough in the first place. I was a human and not a demon after all, let alone a brute demon. I was learning how to better defend myself. I walked into the room and let out a sigh. Today was tough, and I could tell it was only going to get much tougher later in the week. I felt my feet slide across the floor in exhaustion, not used to the strenuous work I had to do. I sat down on the bench in front of the fireplace, staring into the flames as I let relaxation finally hit my body. The warmth of the fire gave me a dull sense of calm, causing me to sigh and lean back against the bench.
You have done well, child.
Huh? You again.
Fear not. I come to observe you as you observe me.
I tilted my head, confused as to what the voice meant. I looked around and scoured the room before turning my gaze back to the fire. Within it, I could barely make out the outline of eyes, which caused me to freeze in my spot. What the hell? You're the fire?
I am a flame, but I am not the fire you gaze upon. I merely look through it to judge you, and the one named Maurice.
You're judging us? Why? For what?
That will be known soon. When the time is right, the one destined to take my power will be tested.
I stared into the fire, lost and confused. Why were we being judged? Was this some sort of trick by the Demon Lord? As I thought of that, the flame slightly intensified.
The Demon Lord, an evil being of this world. He is a curse plaguing this land.
You hate the Demon Lord as well?
He is not worthy of life, but I care not enough to rise from the darkness to rid the world of him myself.
What do you mean?
I have been generous with you, child. You must now be patient.
Before I could even think to protest, the eyes hidden within the flames vanished and the voice disappeared from my mind as if it were part of a dream I had woken from. I shook my head and rubbed it, taking it in. Some sort of spirit or guardian was watching over us. Apparently it seemed strong enough to defeat the Demon Lord himself. Was it possible? Even more so, it was going to test one of us to take his power? My mind instantly went to Sam. There's no reason for me to be the one to be tested, so it had to be him. How would he be tested, though? I shook my head. This was too confusing to think about right now. However, as I sat back and let my mind reorganize itself, I suddenly realized something. Where was Sam? I stood and walked to the door, opening it and peeking it out into the hall. Sam was nowhere in sight. What the? Sam was really late in coming back. From what we had discussed, he should have been back, or at least on the way. However, the distance to the training area was not that far. I began to wander the halls, trying to find where they were. Luckily, Sam made a lot of noise.
Fuck you!
Sam? I rushed toward the noise, stopping at an open door. Peering in, I gasped as I saw the war room in disarray as everyone seemed to hug the walls, watching the chaos that was breaking in the middle of the room. Hi, Sam. We found him. Sam and Zero were clashing sword to spear, with Sam's face full of rage and Zero's expression void of emotion.
You're too slow. Faster! Want me to go faster? Fine!
Before my eyes, Sam and Zero became barely visible shadows through the air. The weapons clanging rapidly, almost like multiple bullets crashing at once as they arced toward one another. What is going on? The incubi and the wives moved toward the door to join me, still watching the fight.
Sam was about to leave for the night, but then that jerk-ass Zero called him a weak coward. Well, you know how Sam is. He did actually try to walk away, but then Zero said that the war was his fault, so that got this whole shitstorm started. We've been at it ever since.
The hell? I looked back to Zero and Sam, still unable to make either of them out as they clashed and fought. My eyes locked on Diana, seeing her lean against the far wall with crossed arms. As I examined her, her eyes seemed to follow the fight almost masterfully. Why was she able to see what the hell was happening despite the lightning speed? Was she able to see what the hell was happening despite their lightning speed? Why was she just watching anyway? Sam, stop it!
Keep at it, Seto. Don't let him stop.
What the hell? I ran over to Diana, despite her not taking her eyes off the plate. Why aren't we stopping this, Diana? She wouldn't get involved. She'd just watch. Because, why not? I still wasn't understanding. Why was I not getting any answer? I turned my gaze to the fight, desperate to try and see what Diana wanted me to witness.
Are you that weak, Incubus? You haven't landed a blow on me once! Shut your fucking mouth! Like father, like son!
I didn't understand why Zero was egging him on and insulting him, but Sam seemed up for the battle regardless of the fact, using the insults as inspirational rage. However, from the faint outline of Sam that I could see, I noticed something off about him. His was surrounded by a heavy green and red mixed aura. The more I watched, the more the aura seemed to build and take shape around Sam. I couldn't tell what it was, but it looked almost alive.
Enough!
At once, Sam and Zero slid to opposite sides of the open space, panting and gasping for air. Around Zero was a faint white light that was diminishing with each breath he took. Around Sam, however, was a clear view of a tense red and green aura. It seemed to flicker around Sam like flames, but it didn't seem to die even with the battle being over.
What the hell? What is that?
Zero.
Diana pushed off the wall and walked to Zero, wrapping an arm around his and making him gasp at the gesture. He looked toward Chalk as she turned to Sam with a hard gaze.
It would seem that we have much to do before the siege.
What are you talking about? Diana seemed to ignore my question as she turned and began to walk towards the room's exit with Cyril in her arm. Sam, on the other hand, dropped to the floor and sat back against the wall, trying to calm down. Instinctively, I rushed over to him. Sam shut his eyes as he forced himself to take deep breaths. Each one seemed less labored than the last, but I could tell he was working to calm his rage. Sam? The aura around Sam finally seemed to die down before Sam let out a heavy sigh and pressed his head back against the wall. I could tell that exhaustion was weighing on him heavily, so I simply sat beside him, waiting.
Sam, what is going on?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Sam, you had a weird aura around you.
I said I don't know!
Back off, jeez. Sam closed his eyes and pushed his back against the wall, letting his head drop to his chest. He gently didn't seem to know what was going on, but I became concerned. Why was his aura so strange? My thoughts ran to the voice from the flame. Was this the start of whatever test he had in mind? Why were Diana and Cero involved, though? Sam finally opened his eyes and looked at me. His irises flash-glowed at the sight of me, but quickly returned to the emerald green as he let out a sigh. Sam. Wait. We're going to continue in the next episode. I'm trying to, make sure I don't use up too much of my recording. I'm still learning the inside out of my new recording things. So, I will see you all in the next episode, and hope you enjoyed. Bye!